All right, welcome back to another episode of Phoenix Edge. This is an RPG podcast, and today we are going to be discussing the recent Tabata interview in which he basically, first off, he confirmed that we were going to have episode Ardyn, and then he also said there was going to be 3 more episodes after that, and that because he doesn't want to rush these episodes, that it was probably going to bleed into 2019, and there was also hinted at that we would have an episode Luna. So a lot of people have been talking about this, and there's a variety of different takes you can take on that. So we are going to address that. Also, we are going to be discussing briefly what game we should be doing a full game discussion on, and we're going to let you guys vote on that if at all you are interested. So make sure that you get your voice heard, because before we were just kind of reviewing games and whichever ones we felt like, and we're kind of leaning towards like, well, what are you guys interested in? Because sometimes we get almost no views for certain games, even though we really enjoyed them. So we want to get your voice heard on that. And then also Kingdom Come Deliverance. It came out a little over a week ago, a little behind the curve here, but it's been getting a lot of talk lately. And we're just going to talk about whether or not we're interested and whether or not we're going to pick it up. Mostly me, I've been really researching this game. It looks really cool to me. So we're going to talk about that. And then we also have 2 comments that we're going to bring up from past week episode in which we ranked all the Final Fantasies. So we're going to bring those up as well. But before we get into that, if you're listening to this on iTunes, make sure that you check out the YouTube page. There's going to be a link in the description, and you can watch us and see the actual video of this podcast. And vice versa, if you want to listen to the audio-only version, there will be a link in the description. And without further ado, Eric, what have you been playing this week to start us off?
Oh, just hypocritical me playing Final Fantasy 15 Pocket Edition.
Yeah, so you got it to work.
Well, circumstances, I got it to work. Well, basically, I had an iPad Air 1, and I've had it for a couple years. I think pretty much ever since it came out. And I'm not the type of person that will jump to a different tablet or a different phone every year. I wait pretty much till my current device is starting to become outdated, then switch over, but the battery died on my iPad Air. I know that sounds like a coincidence, and people are going to be like, I bet he just wanted to play that Pocket Edition. And honestly, I didn't care to play it. I saw videos of it, and I was able to make a pretty, fair assessment on it. But no, it died out. I went and got an iPad Pro base model.
So you didn't go buy an iPad Pro just to play this game?
No, this was after my iPad Air died out.
Okay.
It's very coincidental it happened around this time, but I assure you people, I did not spend over $500 just to play Pocket Edition. Trust me, I didn't want to play Pocket Edition that badly.
Now we might end up spending $500 to get the complete Final Fantasy 15 game, but anyway,
yeah,
that's a side point.
I did play through it. I'm on chapter 4 right now. I like the gameplay aspect of it, but it really does feel like a Cliff Notes version of FF15, and that's actually funny saying that because Final Fantasy 15 itself feels like a Cliff Notes version of itself. So,
yeah.
It feels very bare bones in this game. You walk across a part of the map. They give you like a little side quest to hear and do, but it's mostly just find things on the map. And you get like extra bonus rewards for doing it, which is a little nice, but there's nothing special to it. There's not much in terms of story side quests. It's just to build up a little more for yourself. So the next part of the area you go to, but it's basically go to point A to point B type of linearity. And it's got the lines and everything from the original 15 game. And I will say they did a pretty decent job for what they did here. They did a good job recreating the cutscenes and everything. But with how the sprites are designed, and not necessarily a criticism of the sprites themselves, but the design of them are... It's even harder to take this game seriously than it did before. I don't feel like this is the version you play if you want the genuine FF 15 experience. This feels like something that you want to try after you've played the main game to get like an entertaining little handheld perspective of it. And now, and you can say to yourself, well, it makes it linear, so it makes it a little more focused. But honestly, in my opinion, it feels like it's easier to point out the faults of the story just because all the stuff in between is skipped. So it just goes to like better my reasons for saying that like a linear story did not work in an open world, and even the story itself like has so many faults in it.
Yeah,
but that's it. I mean, basically, combat's fun.
Well, I mean, well, that's good. Yeah, I played it a little bit on my phone as far as I could get. So I can't really say too much on whether or not my personal experience with it. I do think it looked a little gimmicky to me. Like, okay, would somebody that's not played it on the PS4 really play this version first? And my answer to that was probably not. I mean, maybe if you don't have a PS4, like, and you just really want to get Final Fantasy 15, maybe you could get this version if you just want to get the story. But I mean, I don't know. You might as well, I guess, just watch it on YouTube and be one of those people, right? But I did play through Final Fantasy 15 in a more linear form, or try to anyways, a while ago when I just wanted to go back through the game with all the DLC. And I just went from beginning to end on New Game Plus. So like all my characters are like level like 68 or 69 or something like that. So, I'm just one hit killing everything. And I just went from beginning to end. I didn't do any quests. Now it was more still open because I still had to travel to places. And like, there's a little bit of like getting lost and exploration and stuff like that. But I pretty much tried to go from beginning to end. And I don't know. To me, I did feel like the story felt more cohesive with that structure in place. I definitely think the open world aspect of the game kind of hurt the narrative. But I see what you're saying too, where like, okay, now that I can only focus on the story, like these holes are becoming like more obvious. So I don't know.
Yeah, I could just say the Pocket Edition. I don't feel like you're going to get any kind of emotional experiences that the original was able to pull off, because despite my criticism of 15, at least they had some beautiful spectacles like Leviathan and like when you fight Titan and everything. Like I got to the part where you fight Titan in Pocket Edition, and the impact and the emotional feel was just like not there at all in this version. And like, but I did feel something in the original one. Like when you do those things, or like when you're in a critical moment, you do feel like the intensity there. But like in the Pocket Edition, it's like that intensity happened in a cutscene, and you just go through maps that like maps you've done in like every map before it, fighting things and touching things, and just hit the parry button, and
But it sounds like they basically made 15 in the Final Fantasy 13, where it's just basically a big hallway. Would you say that?
Yeah.
But I mean, it's on mobile, so it's like it's not like really a criticism. But
yeah, I mean, I would say 15 has better execution of writing, but in terms of pacing, it's much worse.
Cool. Mm-hmm. Well, very cool. Do you plan on finishing it, or did you finish it?
I'll finish it. I paid $20 for it, so I mean that's very expensive.
Might as well, right?
I'd say if other people who've already played 15 and want to try it, $20 is a little steep for it. I will admit that. If you want to try to wait for a sale, like Square Enix sometimes does sales where they do like special 15% off days or something like that. I'd say you can give it a whirl on that. If you truly are a FF15 fan and you pretty much disagree with everything I say about it, if you are a major fan, then sure, it's worth it. But if you're not, this one will definitely not change your mind.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've noticed since this Pocket Edition came out, I think it's been a little lower budget than people had imagined. Because before the game was coming out, people were speculating like, oh, is this going to come out on the Switch? But now that it's come out on the phone, I've noticed some people saying, well, I don't think this would be a good fit for the Switch. I don't know. But did you have any comment on that? Or
that they would have to reconfigure the game to accommodate the Switch. Unless you're only allowed to use the touchscreen on the Switch, which I'm sure that would be an available feature, but they would have to redo the game where you would have to reconfigure the buttons to work with it, like make parry button A. But the thing is, this is a very mobile feeling game. If you put it on the Switch, it's not going to feel like a full-fledged game. So, because essentially what you do in combat is when you go in, you tap a monster you want to kill, and you can switch between weapons, but you're ultimately just sitting there and waiting Noctis to do his thing. And you can say to yourself, like, oh, well, that's how most RPGs are. But, like, it feels kind of boring sitting there watching them just do the thing, especially since it feels action-oriented. And all you're doing is just switching a weapon once in a while, or maybe, like, doing a healing. And it feels fine. It's kind of fun with a mobile device, but with Switch, I think people will demand a little more out of the combat system, which I don't think this game can provide.
Very cool. Yeah, that's what I've seen is that people said, hey, you know, I played it and it feels like a mobile title, or it feels like a cell phone game. It doesn't feel like a mobile game, but
I can agree to that.
Very cool. Cool. So what have I been playing? I was inspired last week because if anyone didn't catch it, we went through the entire Final Fantasy mainline series and ranked them best to worst in our opinions. And you put Final Fantasy V, I think, in your top 5 or close to
Number
it.
5 was number 5.
Yeah. So, and I saw a couple other places where people really liked Final Fantasy V, and my general opinion was before that was like, hey, you know, I know like gameplay wise, it was really good, but when I played it at the time, I was very focused on story, and I didn't really like the story that much when I originally played it. Back, I think when I was on like 8th grade or something when I played it the first time, and I hadn't touched it since then because I went through it, and then after that, it was just like, okay, I'm done with that. I don't need to do that again. And so I've been wanting to like revisit that game, so I've been revisiting that game this week. I actually got on the Game Boy Advance before I just emulated it, so got on the Game Boy Advance. It's got better localization, and I was able to actually do a patch to the Game Boy Advance version because I'm emulating it, and it actually patched in the Super Nintendo audio, so it's kind of like the definitive version, I guess you could say. But this time around, I'm actually really enjoying it. I'm only about 6 or 7 hours in, but I prefer, or what's the correct way to say this? I appreciate gameplay a lot more now than I used to. I used to only be about the story, so I'm really liking the game from that front. And the story's starting to grow on me a little bit. I could see when I first started off why I was kind of like standoffish about the story, but I can kind of see the humor now. And you know, this playthrough is kind of give me some new insight into the game because, like I said before, I really wasn't into gameplay aspects, and just now that I am, and I'm going through and like having all my characters master all these jobs, and then like kind of swapping out abilities, and it's adding a lot of a unique play style to this game that I don't think I really appreciated before. I think before I just stuck with like one class throughout the entire thing. I was like, whatever, like, you know, let me just get the story. So I'm appreciating it more this time. So I'm having a good time with it.
Yeah, FF5 is such a beautiful game, and I love messing with that job system. I kind of do the same thing every time, but I have experimented before. Something I really like to do is I like to eventually make everyone back into freelancer. But the benefit of being freelancer is you can put two jobs on each character. So what I do is I max out Ninja for Bart's and Ferris. I max out both Ninja and Ranger, and I put X-Strike, and I put Dual Wield on. So every time I use X-Strike, both of them hit 8 times at once. with their
Oh,
weapons.
wow.
And it's pretty magnificent. And then for Lena and Galef / Krail, I usually put like every magic spell, or like put like more of the healing aspects on time magic on Lena, and the black mage and like summoner aspects on Galef / Krill, but I ultimately do red mage on both of them. So whatever magic I want at that time, it's like you can cast it twice, but that one's really hard to pull off. But I know some secret ways to get job points quick. That's the thing I like about the game, though. You can be just so creative with it. There isn't like one build you have to use. You can make the kind of build you want and go with it. Some builds may be easier than other builds, but it's not like FF3 where it felt like, man, I have to beat these jobs to beat this. Or it's just going to be impossible. Yeah. Like FF5 was just balanced so right in its job system that you just had fun playing around with it all day. Be like, and just be experimental. You're in control of it. And on top of that, Final Fantasy V it's a nice adventurous feeling game.
Yeah, this time when I've been going through it, I feel like Square was trying to emulate Dragon Quest to a degree, if that makes sense. I don't know, like, because when I play Final Fantasy IV, it felt like very story based, very narrative driven, and Final Fantasy V still has a story, and it's not like it's like very bare bones story. Like there's a fair amount of narration and everything to it, but I shouldn't say narration, but you know what
I'd say it's a fun story, not a deep story.
Exactly. That's a better way of putting it. But yeah, I can see what you're saying. That like a lot of it is just a sense of adventure. It calls back on the Warriors of Light type deal, almost. And it really feels maybe like Square was trying to go back to its Nintendo roots a little bit, but tell a more modern story in a game. So I don't know. I'm liking it so far. I'm gonna keep playing it. See if I change my mind. Maybe next week or the next podcast episode, I'll be like, okay, Final Fantasy V, exactly what I thought. But we'll see. But moving on, though, our first topic, we are going to be, or we want to know what you all want us to discuss, right? So in the past, we would just pick a game that we both wanted to play or talk about, and then we would do a full episode on one of those games. Now we picked a couple different games, or we talked about a couple different games that might be fun to talk about, and we're going to let you all vote. So I'm going to put a poll here on this YouTube video, and you're going to be able to click on it and vote, or if for some reason that's not loading for you, you can just comment in the discussion or in the comments portion of this YouTube video and just let us know what you want us to play. If you just hate all the games that we bring up, then just let us know also, and what else you would rather us play. If we see a couple of people saying the same game that is not something that we brought up, then I'm sure we're willing to buckle there and go to that. But so we're looking at Final Fantasy VII, classic game. It's we got the 7 remake coming out soon, so hopefully, we think it'd be cool to run through that and do an episode on that. Xenoblade Chronicles. A lot of people were disappointed with the sequel, or spiritual sequel, I should say. So, kind of be interesting to go back and revisit that original game. Then we also have Radiant Historia. Eric was praising that game last week. And you still have to beat that game, don't you?
Yeah, I've gotten about maybe halfway through it. Trying to complete a lot of things at once, so.
So if you want to drive Eric nuts, just pick that one. But no, it'll probably be a while before we talk about that. Or Terra Enigma. That's also another one that's commonly talked about as being one of the greatest games.
Pick that one.
So Eric wants you to pick that one. So there's that one. And then, for the last 2 months or so, we've been talking about Secret of Mana. I'm still down to do a game discussion on that. We can do that fairly soon if that's all what you all want. However, we have been talking about Secret of Mana almost every week. but I'm down to talk about it some more. But we don't want to devote an entire episode to it if you guys have no interest. But we would be talking about the Super Nintendo version. So these aren't the only games like we'll talk about or whatever, but we just thought of some off the top of our heads. And so go ahead, pick from those. If there's something else you would want us to talk about, or you have a different idea, go ahead and leave that in the comment section of the YouTube page. And if you're listening to audio only version, you will have to click on the YouTube link and leave your comments there. But we will let you know what is the result of that next week. You got anything on that, Eric?
You just heard me say it. The thing is, a lot of people haven't played Terra Enigma because it only came out in Europe. So a lot of people who lived in North America did not get their chance to play it. But if you've not, I don't care how you go about it. I'm not saying how you should get it. All I'm saying is that you need to experience that game. If you truly want to know how great the Super Nintendo era of JRPGs were, then Terra Enigma is a strong example of that, and I definitely put that up there with Chrono Trigger in terms of greatness.
So, Eric's strongly pushing the Terra Enigma love here. So, if you want to make Eric happy,
no pressure.
Pick Terra Enigma. But just a quick reminder, we got Final Fantasy VII, Xenoblade Chronicles, Radiant Historia, Terra Enigma, and also Secret of Mana.
Mm-hmm.
So, pick one of those 5 or another game. So go ahead.
But joking aside, I love all these games, and I'm happy to talk about any of them.
So we have our next topic here. We have episode Ardyn confirmed. Recently, Tabata did an interview with Famitsu, I think it was. I don't know. But he did an interview with some publication, and basically he stated that episode Ardyn is officially confirmed and will be the first episode of the DLC for this year. And he also stated that, or hinted that the next episode after that would be Luna Freya, which makes sense to me, but that they're going to do 2 more episodes after that. And he doesn't want to rush the development of that. So it's probably going to bleed into 2019. Okay. So there's a couple different ways people have been looking at this. Some people have been saying that they're just pissed that people are making this content still, and that Final Fantasy 15 isn't closed, and I can sympathize with that. And then other people are just like, Jesus Christ, like I wanted this, but I don't want it to go into 2019. And then other people are like still like super excited to get this DLC. Where are you on the spectrum, Eric? I think I know where it is, but...
Well, my main complaint about the first DLC lineup with the main 4 characters is... Well, not 4, the 3... the Gladios, Prompto, and Ignis episodes, is my main argument always has been, why were these not in the main game? These feel like such holes in the plot that I couldn't, it was just too distracting. It was, but with these episodes, this is the type of DLC I wanted to see. I wanted them, because Ardyn is not a main character. Luna is not a main character. The other 2, I don't know what they're doing for the other 2, but these are seeing the game from an actual different perspective. And Ardyn as the main villain, it's like, okay, cool. We can see what his story is like. Luna is not a main character, so it'll be good to see where she was during our adventures. And I think these are 2 fair DLCs to make. And this is exactly what I wanted before. But they made the mistake of just taking what was supposed to be in the game and then just separated it and made it DLC season pass. And I find that type of thing insulting, especially when they're admittedly saying that we feel like now, because of feedback, that the game truly does feel incomplete. And I think I remember that interview saying that the surveys they had, that people were 62% no, 62% of people who played were satisfied with the game's story, which is pretty abysmal. You had nearly 40% of your audience not enjoy your story or feel like they got what they could out of it. So I think you just kind of have to accept to a point. They've already tried to patch up as much as they could. And I can appreciate that, but I've said before that it shouldn't have been that way before. But I'm glad they're doing episodes that actually feel like it's actually additional to the game, not filling holes in. So I agree with them when they say that we want to actually just start developing content that feels like that adds to the game, not just fills in holes. So I'm 100% for that. Tabata is right about that.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from too. I think that just because, like you said, at least with Ardyn, this isn't like he is the villain, but his backstory would be a complete divergence from the main plot. So that definitely does feel like DLC. I'm a little more iffy on Luna. I still feel like her story, or at least what she was doing, should have been in the game, considering the fact that she traveled to every location we did.
I can agree that in the main game she needed more screen time. Ardyn arguably also. But I can slightly forgive that more just because they're not actually part of the main cast.
Sure. So here's the thing. In the prior year DLC, we had to deal with the fact that we had to pay $5 to figure out why a character went blind. Right? So that's outrageous. So now, we look at this year's DLC, we can look at it and say, okay, well, yeah, we would rather have more screen time with Luna in the original game. However, it's not like, it's not like we played the game and like all of a sudden like Luna's missing an arm or something. And when they're like, oh, like find out in 2018, like, at least it's just like, okay, like we would have preferred more screen time, but okay, like this is at least in the realm of acceptability. So, I mean, that is a little bit of an improvement from last year. And, so that's for sure. I've been seeing that there's a pretty strong rumor going around too that one of the episodes is going to be Nyx, the main character from Kingsglaive, which I don't know if they would actually do that because I feel like they would have to get the guy from Breaking Bad back unless they just got somebody else
Honestly, I hope
to do
not.
the voice acting. Dude, I think that'd be cool because that would definitely be a story that has nothing to do with Noctis. And that would be DLC to me, unless they try to tie it in somehow, like using the afterworld or something. But, dude, I think I like that character better than I like Noctis. So I would be in support of that. I don't know. Maybe if they gave me some options, like, would you rather have this or Aranea DLC or Iris? I would probably choose one of those other ones. But I don't know. If Square came out and surprised me with Nyx DLC, I would be like, dude, I'm probably going to buy that because that would be interesting. So,
it's interesting you bring that up. Now, I would not like be against Nyx because, I have nothing against that character itself. I actually thought he was one of the brighter points of the Kingsglaive movie. But I think in terms of context of FF15 itself, I think there are more important ones in there. And it's funny you say Aranea and Iris, because that's actually the last two DLCs I want it to be. Because there are 2 points of the story where it would make so much sense for their DLC to come in. So for Aranea, there is a point where Noctis and his crew ask her to take care of the people on the train. So her, Biggs, and Wedge, you can see events that unfolded from there, and maybe some interesting world building can go on from there. So maybe like Aranea gets to go into I forgot the name of the place. Not Terabithia. God, Tenebrae. Right. I just said something completely different. But maybe have her go in there and do a dungeon in there, and we can actually finally get to see Tenebrae, and maybe not by Noctis's perspective, but at least by Aranea's perspective, which would actually be pretty cool. And then, of course, everyone wants Iris, the Demon Slayer DLC. Maybe we can finally see Cindy 10 years later, maybe Cindy joins Iris in one of her demon exterminations.
Cindy finally bought a new shirt. She's been wearing the same one since she was 10.
And maybe we can get more depth out of Cindy, and maybe like Iris can be like the, you know, like someone for her to talk to and be like, you know, Cindy's just had doubts about her life, or like maybe trying to be great like her father or something like that. Some little something, give a little depth to Cindy while they're out there exterminating a demon. And that would be really cool. And like just something like a famous Final Fantasy boss that Iris has to go against. I think those two would be really good DLCs and would be opportunities to build upon the world without feeling like they were just like filling in like missing pieces of the puzzle. Because overall, we get the gist of 15's story. It's just that they've just had these awkward skips in the story that goes back to saying that the game's story is horribly paced because I mean, the open world's a contribution, but I mean, like we said, we played it linear, like in a linear style, and I mean, the results were not great from that either.
Yeah, I think that if they did go in that route that you laid out, that would be probably the best way they could try to combat some of the issues that the story still has. Just kind of fleshing out the world even more so that it actually feels like a full game, you know? I think that would be a good route to go. Dude, I don't know, man. But if they came out with, like, let's say they made Kingsglaive into a DLC that you could play as Nyx and we could, like, run around Insomnia and see it fall and everything. Like, I know that would probably be pretty expensive, but if they came out and did that, dude, I would be excited. I would buy that. That would get my attention. But I'm not sure if they're going to go either of those routes, though, because from the interview that I saw, one thing they did specify was that last year's DLC ended with episode Ignis, in which they said a lot of people teared up over that game. And I guess some people had an emotional reaction with episode Prompto as well, which they're glad. But they want this year's DLC they said they want it to be more happy, more like the people to have smiles on their face while they're playing it, right? So
I just want it to be good.
Yeah, that's my thing. I'm like, I don't care if it's like sad or happy. Like, if you make me like laugh hysterically and like I had a good time with it, I can have just as much appreciation for it as if I like was like bawling on my couch. But which none of the DLCs actually got that emotional reaction from me. But anyways, so what we can gather though is that if they're trying to go a more happy route with this year's DLC, I don't know why they're saying that, but then they're going to start off with episode Ardyn. Maybe they're trying to get that out of the way because I can't imagine that being happy, and I can't imagine episode Luna being very happy either, given her fate. But so maybe the last two will end with a little happier note. So I don't know if Aranea's story would be with Tenebrae would be that happy, considering like that entire region was like annihilated.
What's the name of that little kid again?
Talcott?
Yeah.
What are you thinking? Like we're gonna have episode Jared?
Oh man, I hope not. I'm thinking of something like that, and I'm like, why do I have a feeling something like that might happen? I highly doubt it, but if they're going for like happy,
the butler of Iris, the old man that we had to avenge, dude, I'm telling you, when I first played Final Fantasy 15 and it got to that point where it said avenge Jared, I remember thinking like, who in the world is Jared? And like, that was the first indication to me that like this story is not going to be up to par. That's a major plot hole for that game. So if they had episode Jared, I don't know if that would be a good game, but that story itself definitely needs some more fleshing out of that character for me to actually care.
Yeah, that scene basically boiled down to is like, Jared's dead, and like your crew is like, well, sucks for you, kid. All right, onwards.
Yeah, and then like it's just this really awkward thing. You can't help but feel like there was something else that was supposed to be there, but it got cut or whatever. So I don't know. Maybe if they fleshed out Jared, I don't know. Maybe they could do a DLC where they just flesh out a lot of these side characters in small ways. So they could have like a episode bonus cast or something, and they could do a little bit of Jared, a little bit of Dino, the gangster reporter. They could do a little bit of the fat guy from Lost that makes an appearance in Final Fantasy 15. I don't know if I could get something down on that too. That might be kind of fun.
Yeah.
I'd be disappointed that way we don't get other stuff.
Him and his amazing adventures of getting people to take pictures for him.
Yeah, well, he just stands in the same spot. I don't know. So, I mean, I think there could be lots of things. I still want more information on Noctis's relationship with his father. I feel like if they could flesh that out some more, that game would feel a lot more complete to me, because a lot of the main game focuses on Noctis's relationship with his dad and like what the ring signifies, and the fact that the car is like a big symbol of Noctis's relationship with his father. A lot of that fell flat to me because we got to spend like, I don't know, 3 minutes with that character, and all he was doing was telling Noctis to not be rude, before he left. So I don't know. There's lots of things and lots of ways they could go, but I definitely think episode Ardyn is definitely the one they need to do for sure, because that's the one the fans want the most. And Luna Freya, I'm all about that. So what do y'all think? Let us know in the comments. Definitely willing to discuss this some more. So if you leave some comments with your theories, we'll bring that up in the next podcast episode and talk about it some more.
Yeah.
Do you have any other thoughts with that?
People in the comments, tell us what episodes you think would be interesting, and we can talk about those and see our reasons of what they might work and not work. Yeah.
Should they expand on the Half-Life 3 tie-in that they released on Steam? Probably not. But if you think so, let us know. That was a joke, by the way. So, our fifth topic here. Kingdom Come Deliverance. This game came out on February 13th, and I really was not that interested in it until I started seeing some hype around it. And I checked it out, and the more I look at it, the more I'm interested in this game. And if you have not heard of this game, don't feel bad. I'm gonna kind of give a little bit of background information on this, but basically there was a bunch of industry game developer veterans that came together in 2009, and they created, like, a lot of these people have very impressive resumes. They worked on the Mafia game series and some other games. You can go to their studio is officially Warhammer, I think it's called. You can Google it and look at some of the games that they worked on. But they came together and they wanted to make an open world RPG, and they could not get investors to back it because they don't have any experience making RPGs. So they kept working on it and kept trying to get investors to invest in it, and they couldn't get people to invest in it. So eventually in 2014, they were like, okay, we're not making very much headway with this game the way we're doing this. We need to get investors. So let's go to Kickstarter and let's set up a page there and try to get money from Kickstarter so we can go to investors and say, hey, there is interest in this game. So they went to Kickstarter and they said, okay, we think we need $5 million to finish this game. If you give us $500,000, which is 10%, then we think we could take that to investors and say, hey, there is interest and we can get a PC version of this game. Well, they put it on Kickstarter. They showed people what they already had developed. And within a year, they had $2 million donated. So quickly, a publisher came along and said, hey, we're very interested in this now. And the game actually was not only released on PC, but just recently was released on PS4 and Xbox One. So that's a pretty good success story, I think, and like a really cool story. The fact that like they only wanted it to come out in the PC and it was kind of like on its last legs, but like Kickstarter really revitalized it. That's really cool. But what really drawed me in about this game was that it's basically taking a lot of inspiration, it seems like, from Skyrim and like Witcher 3, kind of blending those together. But the actual world that you're running around in is a lot less fantasy driven. It's actually based in history in the Czech Republic in the 1400s. And they're like all the characters, like the king and everything around that time frame is in the game. And they actually brought in historians to make sure that things were historically accurate. The towns and cities are actually built in a manner that was accurate to how towns and cities were built back then. So you don't just have like an inn being somewhere because it's convenient for the player. An inn is where it would be in the city, right? And just little things like that. And then also, if you look at any of the Let's Plays, you can look online. There's a lot of just attention to detail in the world that you don't usually see in a lot of games. A lot of open world games, you'll see like you'll start to notice after a couple hours, like, okay, they have like 6 different trees, and they're just using those 6 trees with like some minor alterations. Like this looks like every like bush and like every piece of grass was like handcrafted. Like it really gives that feeling that like if I just go over this like little hump, that there's going to be something new for me to look at, which is really cool. And then on top of that, people have been praising the combat system by saying that it's actually very rewarding to your skill level as a player, as opposed to just like being a stat grind. So for all those reasons, I'm really interested in this game and I really want to pick it up. But the only reason I have not picked it up is because, first off, the game to run on your PC, if you want to run it at full settings, you have to have a baller machine. I was reading the review from IGN on this game for PC, and they actually said at various portions of the game, they had to turn down the settings because even their machine at IGN was not capable of running the game at full specs.
That's kind of surprising, as this comes off as like more of a low budget title. I'm kind of surprised that they're able to push some of the graphical fidelities there. I mean, that's kind of impressive in itself, but I kind of wonder if that's because it wasn't optimized correctly, or that they actually accomplished a graphical feat that requires such like power from your machine.
Well, and that's the thing. If you look at a lot of the game footage, like the world itself is exceptionally detailed, and that's one of the big things that it's getting a lot of praise for, is how detailed the world is, the lighting effects and everything. It looks crazy good, even for like it has weather patterns and everything that look really realistic. And it's getting a lot of praise because this team has never worked on an RPG before. And even when like Bethesda comes out with a open world game, it usually has a lot of issues. And this game definitely has a lot of issues with as far as bugs. But you might be right as far as if it's just not designed as efficient as it could be. Because if you look at some of the character models, to me, they look a little like iffy, because they look good, but they don't look as good as they could. But I agree, man. When I read that, I was like, wow, this is really surprising in of itself that they could push a game that looks or is that system heavy. So that's the main reason I haven't gotten it on the PC, because I don't want to run it at the lowest settings, and I don't want to constantly have to be tweaking the settings. But I did look at getting it on the PS4, and the problem with the PS4 version, because the game just came out a week ago, is that apparently the PS4 and the Xbox One version, the game is like crashes all the time. It like has so many bugs on the PS4 and Xbox One version that it's basically like this team is working in overtime to try to patch those versions of the game. And so I'm kind of like in this position where like, okay, I can either play it on the PC on my smaller screen in my computer chair and like constantly jacking with the settings, or just play it on the lowest possible settings. Or I could try to get a more like congruent experience on the PS4, but like just deal with the fact that it crashes all the time. But I would be able to sit on my couch, listen to, through the sound bar on my big screen TV. So I'm kind of in the position where I want to play this game, but I'm just going to wait until they patch it some more,
Yeah, this is such a common thing with open world games. And I can understand why. If you have such a large game with a large map with a bunch of stuff to do, I mean, you're going to get bugs. I mean, it's just going to happen. And
yeah.
You can commend them for how far they got without the bugs, but like not even Bethesda can get away from this. Is there's always going to be day one bugs and crashes. That's why I always advise the people with open world games, like, unless you have enough passion for the series, enough that you're willing to deal with day one woes, I would wait just like at least a couple days, a couple weeks, and, let them iron out any bugs or issues the game has. Unless the game just like comes out just so spectacular out of the box that like the minor nuances are just that minor. But especially with a game like this, where it's made by a more low budget team on the Kickstarter, I think it was, I would definitely just do your research and see where things are progressing. Like you say right now on the PS4 and Xbox One version that it keeps constantly crashing. I would kind of hold my money back until they do finish that. It's not saying to not play the game, but it's saying like, if you're just going to be dealing with constant crashes and frustrations from it, I would advise to just play a different game until, they fix that stuff out, then try it. Because, you only get one first time experience. So at least try to make it a good one.
Well, I like how you kind of nuance that, because on one hand, it is very impressive with the amount of money that they used, the quality of game that they're releasing here. And I think it speaks volumes to when you take industry veterans that have done this before and bigger companies, they just know how to utilize resources better, right? Than, some talented and creative guy that's never really worked in a meaningful way in the business, gets $500,000 from Kickstarter and, or $5 million. And like next thing you know, they're, building their own office or like putting like stand-up desks in the studio or something. It's like, no, man, you need to spend that on working out bugs or finishing the animations, or, it's just the fact that they've been so tight with resource management is very impressive to me. And I think, honestly, I know that not only is it a historical game based in the Czech Republic, but I think that's also where they developed it. So I think $5 million will probably get you a little further. But even then, man, like it is a lower budget game. And but for what they've been able to do with that is very, very impressive. And, with smaller teams like this, though, like you said, you are going to have bugs. And that's mostly because, they can't have a million people just like beta testing this, it's just not feasible. So, kind of like, people testing it is going to be day one. You buy it on day one and then you report the problem and then they fix it. So, that is what it is. I do think it is interesting though, that this company or team was able to, do what they did on the budget size that they have. And then like, game companies like EA are basically saying that like, hey, games are too expensive. Like we need to do all this other bonus crap to make money because games are so expensive to develop. And then you have a game that IGN is having a hard time running at full specs. And it's like the budget was what, $5 million? Granted, it was in the Czech Republic, but still, it's like, come on, dude. Like,
yeah,
I think a lot of it has to do with resource management.
Yeah, you just need to play smart, not just draw as much money as you can and make it magically look better or play better. It's, I can't speak on behalf of those companies because I obviously don't work for them. But, if you feel like there's some trouble in your high production values, then I really think you just need to go back and look at what you can do to cut costs without costing quality. And I know that's easier said than done, but they're the ones who are the smart ones, not me. So
yeah, hey, I don't work there, and I don't have any expertise to say on that, but I have no problem giving my opinion on it. So sorry. That's what I like doing. If I am wrong though, let me know in the comments, and I will I'm open to some other observations for sure. Go ahead.
Just look at Resident Evil 7 for reference. That was clearly not a high budget game, but it looked good. It played great. It was fun. And that's one of Capcom's best selling titles in a long while. So take some notes down.
Yeah, for sure. All right. To close this thing off, we do have some comments that we're gonna talk about here. So, the last episode we talked about the Secret of Mana remake, our impressions with it. We also talked about our ranking for the mainline Final Fantasy series, best to worst. And first off, we have a dude McGuy here. He said, great podcast and discussion. It was fun to listen to. Maybe you could do a podcast on your favorite spinoff titles. He says like sequels, tactics, Dissidia franchise, etc. And before we talk about that, it says my personal list from first to worst. He says he has not played 11 and he did not finish 3, so that's why it's not in there. But he says number 1 is 7, then 6, then 10, then 4, then 12, 9, 13, 5, 8, 1, 2, 15, and this is really going to get Eric. He put 14 as the very last one. But he said he only finished the main story content of Realm Reborn, and he's just not an MMO person. But that's what he put his rankings as. So I don't really have too much of an issue with the ranking. I think 14 is a little low, but it is personal preference. Did you want to say anything about that before we...
Nothing I should say on camera.
Yeah, no. I know, Doom guy, you're just... this is a good... I pretty much agree with this. I like that you stuck a 12 in the top 5. Definitely agree with that for sure. And he put number 6 as number 2. So I think that was the same place for your number 2. So got some common place there. But he did ask if we could ever do a podcast on our favorite spinoff titles. I think that would be a interesting podcast to do for sure. We should probably do that in the future. I'm thinking sequels we could definitely do. And then obviously the spinoffs like tactics. I think we'd have to put a limit on what constitutes the spinoffs and sequels, because I mean he's saying the Dissidia franchise, and I feel like if you're gonna include the Dissidia franchise, which is a completely different styled game, then what's stopping us from including like a Final Fantasy Chocobo racing game, you know?
Yeah,
and stuff like that.
Maybe you kind of look at this more like a no holds bar type of thing. Just don't like anything but the main line. Like if you want to do the mobiles, you want to do the handheld spin-offs, the some console ones like Crystal Chronicles or Tactics series, or like just the Evil East Alliance in general and stuff like that. Yeah. I would need to take a little time to think about that, because there's a full history of spin-off titles. So
yeah, because it's like if we say Tactics, which I totally am, and I feel like Tactics should be a mainline game, and then we have Final Fantasy 12. Well, both of those are Evil East, so then are we going to include Vagrant Story? You know, like there's a lot of questions there. You know.
Yeah, well, maybe we can limit it to it literally has Final Fantasy on the box, and not taken from something like Final Fantasy Legends or Final Fantasy Adventures, because we know that's Seiken Densetsu and aka Mana series and the Saga series, so we would be kind of more talking about those games instead of actually Final Fantasy itself, because we all know Final Fantasy was essentially written on there to help it sell better.
Yeah, that'd probably be a good way to put at it. Like, hey, let's just use some common sense here. You know, okay, yes, this has Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles or whatever for the GameCube. I don't know, like I wouldn't include those, even though it has Final Fantasy on it, because those are just cash grabs in my opinion. But it's probably a good thing to discuss. So thanks for the suggestion, and we'll definitely be thinking on that. I'm gonna try to look in that and see exactly how we could frame that, and I'm sure Eric's already thinking of some ideas, so we'll talk about it and get back.
Why can't you all just suggest a top Dragon Quest games? I know there's only like 4 people who would listen to that, but still,
the top Dragon Quest games,
they're all good. Just put them all in the line and be like, number 1, all of them. Number 2, the online game, because they never brought it here.
Yeah. The only issue with that I would have is I've only played like 3 of them, so my list would be very short.
Maybe in the future, if Hat ever decide to go on a DQ marathon craze.
Yeah, I will. Hey, I liked Dragon Quest V a lot. That really surprised me. So I want to get down on another Dragon Quest game. We should put a Dragon Quest game in the voting. We'll have to keep that in mind. So moving on. Leon, he says, amazing episode, guys, as always. And to be honest, this one motivated me a little bit and made me write a small entry in a blog of mine with my ranking and his thoughts on the Final Fantasy series. So he left a link there and he wanted to check it out. I checked it out. He's got a link there if y'all want to check it out in the description of last week's episode 19. And he gives some really good insight on his personal feelings with the Final Fantasy series. And he gives a couple links to this podcast, which I really appreciated. And I think it was really cool that that episode inspired you to write that. I definitely liked his rankings. But I do notice that I did notice that he put Final Fantasy V quite low. So I don't know. I'm replaying the game now, Leon, and you might have to revisit that game because it's pretty good on this most recent playthrough.
Yeah, I would definitely do a full discussion of that one day.
For sure. And then, of course, Mike from Dark Pixel Gaming, he said he really enjoyed this episode. He was listening to that episode while he was making the animation for the Final Fantasy 13 review. So if you go and listen to that review when it comes out on their channel, you see the animation, just know that the Phoenix Edge RPG podcast, that was the motivational audio that was playing in the background while the creator was making it.
Dark Pixel is a great channel. I mean, they do amazing Final Fantasy mainline reviews, and I really like the perspective they give on their podcasts about things, and they give thoughts on other different types of videos also. And I find them very insightful, and it has gotten me to think about things differently than I had before. So definitely a great channel. Go check it out.
Yeah, for sure. But that about wraps this episode up. One thing I forgot to mention in the beginning of the podcast episode was that we're trying a new thing. Let us all know if you think it's annoying, but we're having a podcast highlight. So one video extra a week where it just does a smaller, one topic. If you notice, we did first 3 favorite Final Fantasies from last week, and we have it in its own section in the channel, so it's not spamming the channel. But basically, we're just doing that to try to get some other people into the podcast. Maybe they think an hour long is too long to give something a chance, so maybe 10 or 15 minutes might pique their interest a little bit more.
So if you can only stand hearing my voice for a few minutes at a time, this might be right up your alley.
Yeah, exactly. So, but let us know if that one extra video a week is just spamming it too much, because we don't want people to get angry and start. We don't want to be annoying. That's what we're trying to say. So let us know in the comments, and we'd really appreciate that. And thanks for listening, and we'll check you back out on the next episode. See y'all.
See you guys.